Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a great day. Thursday. Oh, man. Get through the day, get through tomorrow, and then the weekend is here. Week 0, college football is here. Having some college football guys on tomorrow's show. Can't wait for that. Today's show, though, because that's what's in front of us. Tony East, top of the hour, 11 o'clock. We're going to talk a little Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, what the rest of their season is going to look like with about 12 games left. Then, we're also going to get into the Pacers. Predictions coming out for the NBA season are already starting to happen. We are 2 months away from the start of the NBA season, but let's be honest. We don't want to talk about basketball right now. We want to talk about a little bit of NFL football because Colts play tonight, 8 o'clock, Amazon Prime. Can't wait to tune in. And as I was thinking, about all sorts of stuff last night, I was thinking about greatness and I was thinking about Caitlin Clark. And I still find it pretty insane that people noticed Caitlin Clark when she was at Iowa. Okay, she was hit a school in a place that I feel like most people haven't visited. Okay, Iowa, a school with 0 women's basketball history. Okay, like it'd be one thing if we discovered Caitlin Clark and she was playing at South Carolina, or if we discovered Caitlin Clark when she was playing at UConn. But no, we found her at Iowa. Okay, and I think it feeds back to this idea that we as a people notice great things quickly. Okay, like greatness just sticks out like, a sore thumb. Okay, and then she goes to the WNBA, and people wanted to deny the greatness that she showed at Iowa. It's a different league. Angel Reese is better than her. All that kind of nonsense started coming out of people's mouths. People saying she wasn't going to win Rookie of the Year and that she'd struggle. And something I've noticed is that everyone who said those things has stopped talking. Haven't heard from those people in a while. I don't know if Elon suspended their Twitter accounts. I don't know if they got fired from whatever sports network they were working for, but those people seem to be few and far between now because we notice greatness quickly. Okay, like we notice something that's going to shift a space quickly. For example, when the iPhone showed up, right, it was major buzz. It was really expensive. That was part of the buzz, but they sold 300,000 of them on the first weekend. And at that time, the iPhone only ran on AT&T's network, but it shook the market and people noticed and people got in line and they waited in line and they bought it. People noticed great things quickly. It didn't take long for us to realize that Patrick Mahomes was, going to be a problem. Okay? It didn't take us long to notice that. Like you saw him play that one game in his rookie season, and you just immediately knew that he was about to change the whole league. We notice greatness quickly. Hey, it didn't take long for people to notice that LeBron James was great. Okay, you saw him play 2 games when he was 18 years old, and you're like, oh, this kid's going to be awesome. Right? This dude looks very different from everyone else on the floor. Okay, and the same thing goes with Michael Jordan and other great athletes. We notice great quickly as a society. Okay, I think we also notice terrible things quickly. Like you saw Jamarcus Russell play 2 quarters, and it was pretty clear that this dude wasn't going to cut it in the NFL. Okay, it didn't take long for people to realize that Ryan Leaf was terrible, right? Like he was only in the league for 4 years. That's absurd. And, that would never happen now, right? Number 2 overall pick, they're staying in the league way longer than 4 years. Okay, we as sports fans and consumers can quickly identify both ends of the spectrum. We can identify great, and we can identify terrible really early in the process. And that's obviously not how every player is, though. Not every player is great or terrible. Some players start off bad and then they progress to solid. Some players start off solid and they progress to really good. Okay, but we notice special very quickly. Okay, and that's, I think, the interesting thing about Anthony Richardson. People are on both ends. There are some people who will tell you that Anthony Richardson is absolutely terrible. And then there are other people out there who are like, I don't know. I think he's going to be great, right? Like, people are on both ends of the spectrum. Okay. Some people have labeled him as great. Some people are already calling him a bust. And I think that a decade ago, the people that would have labeled Anthony Richardson a bust would have been correct. I think a decade ago, Anthony Richardson would have showed up, played 5 quarters, been inaccurate, and he very quickly would have been written off. But I think that the NFL and football in general has changed quite a bit. Tom Brady at the Fanatics Fest, he was asked about this. He was asked about how football has changed, and here's what the GOAT, best quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, had to say about how football has changed.
There used to be college programs. Now there are college teams. You're no longer learning a program, you're learning a playbook. And the program is ultimately, like at Michigan, for me, that was a pro-style program. 5 years, I got to learn how to drop back pass, to read defenses, to read coverages, to be coached. I had to learn from being 7th quarterback on the depth chart to moving up to 3rd to ultimately being a starter. I had to learn all those things in college. That was development. Then I went to New England, and I was developed by Coach Belichick and the offensive staff there. I didn't start my first year. I think it's just a tragedy that we're forcing these rookies to play early. But the reality is the only reason why they are is because we dumbed the game down, which has allowed them to play. It used to be thought of at a higher level. We used to spend hours and hours in the offseason and training camp trying to be a little bit better than next year. But I think what happens is it discourages the coaches from going to deep levels because they realize the players don't have the opportunity to go to a deep level, so they're just going to teach them where they're at.
That was Tom Brady talking about how football has changed over time. And, he makes it sound like it's a terrible thing. I think it's a good thing. I don't think that, I think this is the highest level of quarterback play we've ever seen in the NFL. But hey, man, like, who am I to argue with Tom Brady, right? And back to this idea, though, of being great and how football has changed over the decade, where if you showed up in the NFL and if you were terrible, you were usually let go of pretty quickly, right? Like Jamarcus Russell and Ryan Leaf weren't in the league for very long. Whereas now, like, Zach Wilson is still hanging on to a roster spot despite being terrible these past couple years. Okay? And I think that when we watch Anthony Richardson, you cannot deny how great the physical tools are. Like, that dude is an absolute specimen. Okay? When you look at him, it is easy to see how great of a player he could be, right? He throws the ball far. He runs fast. He's really big. Okay? Very similar to Josh Allen. When you watched him his first 2 years in the NFL, it was clear that he could throw the ball far and he could run fast, but he struggled throwing the ball accurately, kind of similar to Anthony Richardson. Okay, and we knew that in the first year of Lamar Jackson, he was wildly explosive, but he struggled to throw the ball from the pocket. And I think that a decade ago, all 3 of these guys would have been written off quickly. They'd be accountants somewhere. They'd be coaching high school football somewhere. But like Tom Brady said in that clip, football has changed dramatically over the years, especially with the way that these guys are now being coached and how they're being taught. Coaches are meeting guys where they're at now and putting them in games, which I think helps develop, because we can talk about how, if you sit a guy for a year, you can teach him all these things. Yeah, that's great. But the best way to learn to do anything is to actually do it. Okay? Like, if I just sat in this room for a year and watched someone else do a show, I would probably learn a little bit, but I'm going to learn a whole lot more being on the air and actually participating in the thing that I'm trying to get better at. And I think it's the same thing with the NFL. Whereas a decade ago, a lot of these raw athletes that maybe weren't as polished at the quarterback position would have been written off. That is no longer the case. Okay, the Bills took 3 years to sit and try to develop Josh Allen, and it worked really well, right? That's the second best quarterback in the NFL now. The Ravens took the time to really sit and develop and work with Lamar Jackson, and they put him in the game so that he could learn on the fly, which I think is, once again, that is the best way to learn. And we are seeing the same thing with Anthony Richardson. And the way that the NFL has changed and how much more willing coaches are to dumb the game down to make it easier for younger players is why I like the chances of Anthony Richardson developing into a good quarterback. I feel like the NFL is way more patient with quarterbacks than what it used to be. Baltimore was patient with Lamar Jackson. Buffalo was patient with Josh Allen. It's paying off really well for both of those teams. Miami was patient with Tua. Okay, Tua went from a guy that looked like he was going to be an absolute and total bust to now being a guy who led the NFL in passing yards last year, was tied for fifth in passing touchdowns, and was top 5 in completion percentage. Okay, Philadelphia was patient with Jalen Hurts. And, they won the NFC one year, made it all the way to the Super Bowl. I can't remember who his offensive coordinator was that year. But, I'm sure he had something to do with it. And while that is the uber positive side of patience, there's also a bad side to being too patient, which I will admit. The Giants have been too patient with Daniel Jones. They probably should have drafted a quarterback with the 6th pick this year. Instead, they opted for Malik Neighbors. The Jets were too patient with Sam Darnold. They didn't make that mistake again with Zach Wilson. But either way, the league has changed. Teams, general managers are willing to be way more patient with quarterbacks than what they used to be. Okay, and obviously there's some danger in that because you can be patient with the guy and not have them develop. But that is where Shane Steichen for this Indianapolis Colts organization comes in to play and why I love the hire from Chris Ballard. Okay, Shane Steichen helped develop Justin Herbert. He helped develop Jalen Hurts. And because teams are more patient and because they're more willing to make things work with young quarterbacks, that's why we see more and more offensive-minded head coaches get hired. Okay, like when we look at what happened this offseason, the Tennessee Titans they fired Brett Venables, one of the better coaches in the NFL, tough, defensive-minded guy. They fired him to go hire an offensive-minded guy because they know that that Titans organization knows that they won't be good unless Will Levis is good. And so all the resources go into developing that guy. It's the same thing in Carolina, right? They tried to hire Frank Reich to kind of develop Bryce Young. That didn't go very well. So they fired him and they hired another offensive-minded head coach to try and develop Bryce Young. Because offensive-minded coaches they don't always, but they tend to help elevate young quarterbacks. And that is hopefully what Shane Steichen is going to do this year. We've seen him do it twice before. I think he's going to have some success with Anthony Richardson this year. And covering Anthony Richardson this offseason has been a lot of fun and also just one of the more interesting things I think that I've gotten to do because he is so up and down. Okay, people right now are down and nervous and worried about Anthony Richardson because he didn't play well in a joint practice 2 days ago. But if he plays well tonight, everyone is going to be back on the Anthony Richardson bandwagon. We're going to be buying jerseys and, Jim Irsay may even hang a banner. He may hang a banner that says something like Anthony Richardson is good. Something like that. I don't know. But it's been so intriguing to follow the ups and downs of the Colts fan base throughout the time watching Anthony Richardson. And what's even more interesting is that this is the first time in a long time that Colts fans have had to deal with a young quarterback that they drafted high that wasn't great immediately. I've got thoughts on that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Locked in, ready to go. Colts, Bengals tonight. Anthony Richardson, how he's going to play. About to get into that. Tony East of Locked On Pacers. He also writes and covers the Fever. He's joining me at the top of the hour, 11 o'clock, to talk a little Caitlin Clark, talk a little Indiana Pacers. That their season starts in about 2 months. Can't wait to get into all that. But, of course, Colts, Bengals tonight. Starters are expected to play for a quarter and a half. And before we went into the break, I hit on the fact that Anthony Richardson is going to be up and down this year. We've seen it throughout training camp. There have been some, pretty great ups, and there have also been some pretty terrible downs, like the joint practice 2 days ago against the Cincinnati Bengals. But once again, if he plays well tonight, everyone will be back on that Anthony Richardson bandwagon. And that is my hope. Okay, my biggest hope for the game tonight on Amazon Prime, 8 o'clock, is that Anthony Richardson looks great. Okay, I want to see that pendulum swing all the way back to the super positive side of how people feel about Anthony Richardson. Okay, because if he plays well tonight, it will be great symbolism for what I think we're going to see this season from Anthony Richardson, which is this up and down roller coaster ride. Okay, bad, 2 days ago in a joint practice, great 2 days later when the lights are on. Okay, like this is a guy that hasn't played a lot of quarterback, and I'm about to tell Colts fans to be something that they don't want to hear because no one ever wants to hear this in any facet of life. You're going to have to be patient with this guy. Okay? I think Colts fans are very used to young quarterbacks showing up and being great quickly. Okay, Anthony Richardson isn't Andrew Luck, and he's not Peyton Manning. Okay, the last two highly drafted quarterbacks by the Colts, number one overall picks, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck. They were absolute studs quickly. Now, Peyton Manning had a rough rookie year through, I think 24 interceptions, which is a rookie record. But in year two, the dude was great. No other word for it. He was great. The Colts went 13-3, and the legacy of Peyton Manning began. Okay, and people were locked and loaded, and they loved Peyton Manning, and it was great. Really quickly. You didn't have to be patient if you were a Colts fan. Okay, it happens quickly. Andrew Luck showed up first season. What'd they go? 11-5. Okay, Andrew Luck showed up, and he was great immediately. Anthony Richardson was never going to be Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning. He's very different. Okay, and he was never going to be, Anthony Richardson was never going to be, in his second year, even if he had played all year last year, he was never going to be as good as Manning and Luck were in their second years because he just hasn't played nearly as much football as those guys have. Andrew Luck was a 3-year starter in college under Jim Harbaugh, a great football coach, whether you like him or not, whether you don't like that he cheated or not. Harbaugh can coach some football at both levels. Okay, that's the guy that Andrew Luck played for 3 years. And it's a large part of why he was NFL ready when he showed up in the NFL. Anthony Richardson played for Billy Napier, who was the head coach at Louisiana like 3 years ago. Not Louisiana State, just Louisiana, okay? Peyton Manning was a 3-year starter in college, and he appeared in every single game his freshman year. Okay? Anthony Richardson isn't as polished as those two guys because he hasn't played nearly as much football. He hasn't played nearly as much quarterback as those two guys in Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck have. Okay, so you can't expect for him to just show up and be great like Andrew Luck and not Anthony Richardson and Peyton Manning were. Okay, because experience and doing the task of playing quarterback helps you be good at playing quarterback. Okay? Like, I think that this precedent that people that are new at something, because Anthony Richardson, I would argue, is still pretty new at playing quarterback. Okay, he played 12 quarters last year, only played one season at Florida where he consistently started. Okay, the dude has barely played any quarterback in the NFL, and he didn't play much in college. Okay, and I'm excited to see what he looks like. I think he's going to have a great night tonight. I think he's going to look awesome. I think, people that love Anthony Richardson are going to turn a blind eye to the fact that the Bengals are playing their backups tonight. And the people that don't like Anthony Richardson are going to be like, oh, it was against backups. Okay, I'm projecting right now what we're going to see on Twitter between, 8, and 9 o'clock, because as I said earlier, the Colts are only playing their starters for the first quarter and maybe half the quarter of the second quarter. Okay. So I think he'll play well tonight because he's playing against Bengal backups. And I hope that's what happens for him, because if he's bad, people are going to be, abandoning ship. They're going to be jumping off, calling him a bust, even though it's just a preseason game. And why are we overreacting to preseason stuff? It's nothing like the regular season. So I hope Anthony Richardson looks good tonight. I would like for there to be some positive talk about him, heading into the season. I'd like for him to have some confidence. I'd like to see him find a rhythm, hit guys on time, on target, move the offense. Okay, I want to see this Colts offense look good when Anthony Richardson is in charge. I also want to see Jonathan Taylor get some carries to build up some calluses. Okay, he's missed 13 games over the last 3 seasons. Christian McCaffrey is a guy who has been labeled as injury prone. Christian McCaffrey is a guy who has struggled to stay healthy throughout his career. Over the last 3 seasons, Christian McCaffrey has played more games than Jonathan Taylor. Okay, so I want to see Jonathan Taylor get some carries to build up those calluses. I'll never forget listening to Reggie Bush do an interview. And it was towards the end of his career when he was still staying in shape in case he got a phone call. And I remember him talking about how he would show up and he would be fresher than everyone, which was partially good. But it takes a few weeks, 2 weeks, I believe is what he said, to get used to the hits that you take. Okay. And he's, did a whole thing on how that's kind of where you're nervous about injury, because your body just isn't used to getting hit like that consistently. And then once you kind of get used to it, he felt like the chance of injury went down. So I would like to see Jonathan Taylor get some carries tonight. Let him get a feel for running behind this offensive line, since he didn't get to do it a lot last year. Let him just get a feel for what it's like to get hit on a football field on a cold Thursday night in Cincinnati. Okay, now obviously I don't want him to play too much, but he needs to get some carries to find a rhythm as well. He needs to get some carries just to get used to seeing what it's like to get hits, because you can't really tackle anybody in any of these practices. Okay, so I want to see what he looks like tonight. I hope he gets a decent amount of carries. Next, the offensive line needs to dominate. Okay, you're playing a bunch of backups like Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith and all these guys should have their way up front. Okay, especially since, this offensive line is supposed to be the best offensive line that we've ever seen. Okay, they've been together for 3 years, so communication and those things shouldn't be they shouldn't be an issue at all. Okay, they should show up. They should be able to push this Cincinnati Bengals backup defensive line around. Okay, they should be able to protect Anthony Richardson at a high level, and they should be able to create some running lanes for Jonathan Taylor or whoever else is, back there playing running back. And finally, the last thing that I want to see a couple big plays in the passing game. Okay, now there's, obviously want to see Anthony Richardson make good decisions, but the Colts have seen an influx of speed at wide receiver. Josh Downs is a 4-4 guy. He's not playing tonight, but still, there's speed at that position. A.D. Mitchell, that's a 4-3 guy. Anthony Gould, who's probably going to play a little bit in place of Josh Downs in the slot. That's another 4-3 guy. Alec Pierce, he's supposed to be explosive. I want to see big, explosive gains in the passing game for the Colts. I want to see them really look to push the football down the field. Okay, because speed is an awesome thing. Speed is a real weapon. But if you don't use it, it doesn't do you much good. So I'd like to see the Colts convert on some big plays down the field. I'm not talking about, like a 60-yard touchdown or anything crazy like that. But a couple 25, 30-yard pickups through the air would be awesome. I think it'd be big for Anthony Richardson's confidence. It'd be big for my confidence in the offense, because let's be honest about what the most important thing here is. It's about me and my confidence in the Colts. Okay, like that needs to go up exponentially on the offensive side of the ball tonight. Defensively, I would like to just see them not suck. just to be as blunt about it as possible. Okay, I would like to not see any, broken coverages. Just look cohesive as a unit. Look like you're playing in stride with one another. Look and appear like you are connected. Okay, that's really the big thing that I want to see from this Colts defense. I want to see Nick Cross make plays. Whoever that other safety is, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Rodney Harrison, Nick, Nick Cross. Don't care who it is. I want to see whoever's playing safety opposite Julian Blackmon consistently make plays, because that is obviously an important position. We know that the corners this year aren't going to be very good. We know that Juju Brents is recovering from a nose thing, so who knows if he's going to play tonight or not. Either way, I don't think it'd be terrible if we saw Dallas Flowers and Jalen Jones get some more reps in live game action, because I think that they don't know who they're going to play at cornerback number 2 yet. I think it's probably going to be Jalen Jones, but we'll see. I'd like to see these guys play in another game to kind of figure out, like, what can these guys do? Like, who can we trust to play opposite of Juju Brents, who's going to be corner number 1, which isn't the most comforting thing in the world. Okay, so I'm very intrigued to see how this team looks tonight. All signs point to them playing well. Last time I checked, they were 6.5-point favorites in Vegas, and they should be, since once again, the Bengals are playing their backups while the Colts are playing their starters. That game starts tonight, 8 o'clock. Should be played, should be on Amazon Prime. Should be, hopefully, a fun game to watch with a lot of Colts points and very few Bengals points. I want to stay in the football realm here for a minute. Bo Nix was announced as the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos, and it's not surprising. Okay, like if they had a FanDuel prop bet, then I would have made a bet saying that Bo Nix was going to be the starter. Unless you have Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre, I am in favor of playing the rookie quarterback right away. Right away. Especially when your other options are Jarrett Stidham, career backup, or Zach Wilson, a guy who has never been good in the NFL. Okay, every rookie quarterback should play unless you already have a legitimate, viable option at the quarterback position. So the Falcons, who paid Kirk Cousins in the offseason, like, it makes sense for them to not want to play Michael Penix Jr. Okay, the only exception I would make for not playing a rookie quarterback, if you don't already have a viable option at quarterback, is if you have a situation similar to what's going on in New England this year. They have a terrible, atrocious, one of the worst in the league offensive line. It's terrible. It's so bad. And the last thing that you want to do is injure your rookie quarterback severely early in their career. Okay, that's the last thing that you want to happen. And I also think that when you put your rookie quarterback out there, you want them in a place where they can actually play the game the way that it's meant to be played, if that makes sense. Like, the Broncos have an excellent offensive line. Okay, it's part of why I was encouraged about the Colts pass rush after that preseason game against the Broncos, because consistently offensive lines in the NFL. Bo Nix is not going to have to snap the ball and immediately start running for his life. Okay, because the Broncos have a good offensive line. Like, he's going to be able to play the game the way that it should be played. He should be able to be calm and composed and feel pretty normal when he's in the pocket. And if Drake May winds up being the starter in New England, which that might happen, that is not going to be the way that he gets to play the game. He's going to snap it and then take off running, because this dude, man, that offensive line in New England is amongst the worst in the NFL. So, a little philosophy there on whether or not teams should play rookie quarterbacks. A lot of stuff on what should happen for the Colts tonight as they take on the Bengals. They should run the Bengals out of the building. That's what should happen. Will it happen? We'll see, right? Anthony Richardson, the roller coaster ride continues tonight. He may be great. He may be terrible. He may be average. I don't know. You don't know. I don't think anyone knows how he's going to look tonight because, once again, this is a guy who hasn't played a lot of quarterback and he needs reps and he needs to just get used to actually playing the position because he didn't do it a lot last year. 12 quarters worth, 84 passes worth, and he didn't play much in college either. So this is a dude who needs reps. He's going to get them for about a quarter and a half tonight. Can't wait to see what he looks like. I also can't wait to see what the NBA season looks like. Got some takes on that. Read an atrocious article that ESPN put out. Going to rip that up a little bit. Caitlin Clark, she continues her season in the coming days. She should be the unanimous rookie of the year. No doubt about it in my mind. I'll get into that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, maybe you're watching live on Twitter at _ Jonathan Smith. If you want to check out the stream there on Twitter, follow me there as well. Also follow the station at Ticket 1430. Maybe you're listening on the beautiful Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download on the App Store or Google Play Store. You can also stream the Dan Dockett Show there as well. Maybe you're watching on YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, I can check out comments and things like that in the chat. You can also text our text line at 317-228-1430 if you have comments on all of the various things that I've said. Top of the hour, 11 o'clock, about 20 minutes away from the great Tony East. He's going to join me. We're going to talk a little Pacers. Their season tips off here in a little over 2 months. Articles and takes are coming out. They're kind of absurd, but hey, that's fine. We'll also get into a little bit of Caitlin Clark as well, and that's where I want to start the segment at. She should be the unanimous Rookie of the Year. Okay, every single person should vote her first place for the Rookie of the Year. Okay, the last unanimous WNBA Rookie of the Year was Aaliyah Boston last year. Which is funny. I find it funny, at least. Okay, that, the Indiana Fever should have back-to-back unanimous Rookies of the Year. Okay, Caitlin Clark is far and away, one of probably the 5 best players in the WNBA, and she is far and away the best rookie. Like, it's not even close. She is so much better than Angel Reese. So much better. Okay, she does everything better than Angel Reese, except for rebound. Okay, Caitlin Clark passes the ball better. Caitlin Clark shoots the ball better. Caitlin Clark finishes better. Caitlin Clark defends better. Okay, just keep working your way down the list. Caitlin Clark does it better than Angel Reese in every single area except for one, rebounding. And I got to be honest, I don't really care if my point guard that leads the WNBA in assists and can knock down shots from 28, 30 feet and stretches the defense. I don't really care if they're a great rebounder. Really, really don't. Okay, and the frustrating part is that I know that there's not a chance, not a single chance that Caitlin Clark is going to be the unanimous Rookie of the Year. No way it happens. She should be. She's hands down the best. But the pettiness and the drama and all those things are undoubtedly going to get in the way. And I find it funny that when we talk about the NBA and versus the way that we talk about the WNBA, they are so incredibly different, and they're both very entertaining in their own right. Like, I'm about to talk about the Pacers coming up here in a couple minutes. I'm going to talk about it with Tony East as well at the top of the hour, 11 o'clock. And when I talk about the Pacers, it's going to be about how ESPN predicted them to go 46-36, and how they're projected to be the 7th seed and all those things, which is obnoxiously wrong. Okay? Like the conversation will be about the basketball. It'll be about how they perform this year. Whereas my WNBA coverage is all of like, why is everyone so petty towards Caitlin Clark just because she's better than all of them? It's vastly different, and I find it pretty funny, and I think everyone does. That's why I'm talking about it. It's one of the more entertaining subjects in just the sports world in general, not even just in the basketball world. And I cannot wait until Caitlin Clark is not the unanimous Rookie of the Year, because it's going to cause this crazy outburst. And I'm just letting you know up front, she's not going to be unanimous, even though she should be, even though she is the best rookie we've seen in the history of the WNBA. I don't think you have to know that much about the WNBA to know that. Given the eyes that she draws, given the way that she passes the basketball, that's still her best skill. I understand that people tune in and watch her shoot the crap out of the ball. And look, she can shoot the crap out of the ball, but she can also pass the crap out of the ball. It is wildly entertaining. It is wildly impressive to see the way that she handles the basketball and the way that she finds her teammates. Okay, she should be the unanimous rookie of the year, but it's not going to happen. Even though she's going to lead the Indiana Fever to probably a top 6 seed in the playoffs, right? And whoever they play, they're going to be a really tough out. Their next game comes up on the 25th. Once again, Tony East, top of the hour here in like 15 minutes. He's going to join me. We're going to talk about just the rest of the season for the Fever. We're obviously going to talk about Caitlin Clark. We're going to talk about, the Pacers as well. Fever's next game is Saturday, August 24th. They're going on the road to take on the Minnesota Lynx. I don't know if you remember what happened the last time they were there, but it was cinema. It was pretty great to watch. Minnesota Lynx head coach is also the coach of the Olympic team, and she said she didn't care at all about Caitlin Clark in a much, much ruder way than what I just said. So that's my stuff there on Caitlin Clark. She should be the unanimous rookie of the year. Don't be upset, though, when she isn't. Now, I want to transition a little bit to the Pacers. The NBA season is 2 months away. Articles are being written about it. Predictions are being made. And, ESPN is just filled with people that aren't very smart. That's what I'm starting to learn here. Season starts in 2 months, which is a reminder that the NBA season's way too long. Okay, 82 games is an insane amount of basketball games. It should probably be closer to like 50, right? That's probably the number that I would put it at. Less games means makes it more interesting. Okay, less games means players have to play in the games because they all mean a little bit more. All of that good stuff. So ESPN, though, predicts the Pacers to go 46-36, even though they went 47-35 last year. And they predict for the Pacers to be the 7th seed, even though they were the 6th seed last year. So they are predicting for the Pacers to be slightly worse, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. ESPN has the top 6 seeds in the Eastern Conference like this. They've got the Boston Celtics as the 1 seed, the Knicks as the 2, the 76ers as the 3, the Cavaliers as the 4, the Bucks as the 5, and the Magic at the 6. And then in 7th, they have the Indiana Pacers. I'm here to tell you, I will be stunned if the Pacers are not a top 6 seed. Okay? And I think that it's important to remember that good is relative. Okay, like the Pacers could be better this next year. They should be better this next year. But if everyone else improves more than they do, then, result-wise, they'll be a little bit worse. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I will completely concede and fall in line on the idea that the Knicks and the Celtics are going to be the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference. That's what's going to happen. Okay, the Knicks bringing in Mikal Bridges, bringing everyone else back, except for Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, they're going to be awesome this year, right? And the NBA, as much as I hate the Knicks, the NBA will be better for it because when the Knicks are good, the NBA is just a little bit more interesting. Boston's bringing everyone back. Okay, they're going to be just as good, if not, maybe even a little bit better. Okay, I don't know if you've heard, but Jason Tatum's had a rough offseason. I bet he's going to be pretty motivated. I think Jaylen Brown's a little upset as well. So Boston and New York, I agree, will hands down be the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference. After that, though, you have to convince me. You have to convince me why the 76ers are going to be the 3 seed. It's like, oh, well, they have Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey. Yeah, Joel Embiid never stays healthy. Never stays healthy. And we know he's going to miss at least 2 games this year because for whatever reason, he refuses to play against the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic. So, there's that. Embiid can't stay healthy. And Paul George doesn't like to play basketball. He likes to show up and be like, hey, I would like a max contract to not play. And then teams are like, okay, sure, here you go. Here's a whole bunch of money to play in, 48 of our 82 games. Jeez. Huh. So I refuse to believe in the Philadelphia 76ers because of that. When your best player is Joel Embiid, who's never made it past the second round of the playoffs, I just have a hard time buying in to that sort of team. Okay, Embiid can't stay healthy. Paul George doesn't like to play basketball. The 76ers are not going to be the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference this year. It's not going to happen. Okay. Honestly, the Eastern Conference kind of feels a bit like the NFC in the NFL. Okay. Where most of the talent has been in the other conference for such a long time that, teams in the NFC in the NFL and teams in the Eastern Conference in the NBA, like they've had higher draft picks. They've just had opportunities to rebuild. And we're starting to see that. Like the East top to bottom this year is going to be a lot better than what it was last year. Okay, that's part of this as well. 4th seed, the Cavaliers. This is utterly absurd. Cavs have issues, a lot of issues. Okay, everyone thought they were going to move Darius Garland this offseason. There's reportedly some tension between him and Donovan Mitchell. They also don't have a great roster. Okay, like they're really big and unathletic, which is not what you want. You want big and athletic, not big and unathletic. Okay, Garland and Mitchell, one of the lesser duos in the Eastern Conference as well. They aren't better than the Pacers. I'll stand on that. So the idea of them being the 4 seed feels really absurd. The Bucks as a 5 seed, that honestly feels right. They're old. I know they have Giannis, but outside of that, like Damian Lillard's going to be 36. I don't really trust that. 36 with a decent amount of injuries. Okay, like I don't think the Bucks are going to be better than Indiana. The Bucks weren't better than Indiana this last year. The Magic, though, Magic are pretty good. Okay, wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if the Celtics were a 1 seed, the Knicks were a 2 seed, the Magic and then the Magic and Pacers were the 3 and 4. Like the Magic and the Pacers, I think are going to be awesome this year. So I expect for the Pacers to not only be a top 6 seed, I expect them to be a top 4 seed heading into the playoffs. They're bringing everybody back. They've got a good head coach in Rick Carlisle. Tyrese Halliburton should hopefully be a little bit better. Hopefully he doesn't mess up his hamstring around the All-Star break. And if he does, hopefully they just sit him and give him time to rest and recover. Okay, that is, I think, the big thing that we all want to see. We want to see a healthy season from Tyrese Halliburton. They've got Pascal Siakam now, which is a big deal. Okay, part of why the Pacers weren't better last year, part of why the Pacers didn't cross that 50-win threshold is because they were terrible against teams like the Hornets and the Hawks and the Wizards. When you bring in a guy like Pascal Siakam, an older veteran presence in the locker room, you tend to have a little bit more focus in those types of games. Instead of laying eggs and losing at home to the Hornets and LaMelo Ball, then you actually win those games. Okay? The Pacers had no issue whatsoever beating the better teams in the NBA last year, in either conference. But all of a sudden, they couldn't beat the Hornets. I refuse to believe that that's going to be the case again this season. Okay, the Pacers, I expect to be, and they should be, a top 4 seed heading into the playoffs. Tony East set to join me here in like 8 minutes. We're going to get into the Pacers' upcoming season, and we're going to talk a lot about Caitlin Clark. Once again, they're playing the Fever and Caitlin Clark are once again playing Saturday night, 8 o'clock, NBA TV. That's what it seems like they're playing on. They're going on the road to Minnesota. Can't wait for it. Okay, like I said earlier, the WNBA, the coverage of it is very rarely about the games itself. It's much, much more been about the drama of what's happening and how these various people don't like each other. And we're going to see that on Saturday night when the Fever travel up to Minnesota to play against the Lynx because, I don't think that quote's going anywhere about, what the Minnesota Lynx head coach said about Caitlin Clark when she was asked about her. She said, I don't give a bleep about Caitlin Clark. I'm willing to bet that Caitlin Clark hasn't forgotten that. I'm willing to bet that the Minnesota Lynx haven't forgotten that the last time earlier in the season before the Olympic break, when the Fever went up there to play against them, they beat them. Okay, I'm willing to bet that the Lynx haven't forgotten that. So I am locked in and loaded into that game. I cannot wait. Cannot wait for all of the drama and the tension that's going to be present in that game. Also can't wait for the Colts and the Bengals tonight. The roller coaster ride of watching Anthony Richardson play quarterback in the NFL is going to continue. Maybe he'll be great. Maybe he'll be terrible. Not too sure. Hopefully he's great. He should be, since they're playing against a bunch of backups. But That happens tonight, 8 o'clock on Amazon Prime. The Indiana Fever on the road Saturday, 8 o'clock, taking on the Minnesota Lynx. Coming up 6 minutes away, Tony East of Locked On Pacers also writes and covers the Indiana Fever. He is set to join me top of the hour, 11 o'clock. We're going to talk about Pacers' upcoming season. We're 2 months away, okay, which is crazy. Once again, that NBA season, way too long. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're also going to talk and get into the Indiana Fever. Aaliyah Boston's having a good year. Kelsey Mitchell's having a good year. The Fever look awesome coming back from this Olympic break. Caitlin Clark looks well rested. That's leading to her playing better than what she was before the Olympic break, right? We've only seen 2 games, so maybe I'm overreacting. I don't think I am. I thought she had turned a corner about a month before the Olympic break. And, hopefully we continue to see her improve and get better as the season goes on. When I come back here in 5 minutes, Tony East, Locked On Pacers, writes for the Fever. He is set to join me, and we're going to cover all the basketball, all the professional basketball in the state of Indiana. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back in 5 minutes with Tony East here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a great Thursday. I feel like this week has just flown by so incredibly fast. Joining me now, Tony East of Locked On Pacers. He also writes and covers the Indiana Fever. One of the original friends of the Real Jonathan Smith Show, Tony East. Tony, what's going on, man?
The OG friends. I didn't realize I was in such a group. That's exciting. I'm doing great. I'm glad that basketball's back. I had too much time with no games.
Man, I feel that. I became an avid reader over the Olympic break. I read 3 books in like 4 weeks.
Wow.
Hey, man, when you pick up a real page turner, you can fly through them pretty quick, you know?
I think I've read 3 books like since college, but I watched a lot of Team USA men's and women's, and then I had a week of nothing. Maybe I should have been reading. That would have been a better use of my time than what I actually did.
What'd you actually do? I'm curious now.
Well, I was in Philadelphia on a trip for 4 of the days, which was productive. But most of it just play some video games, do some yard work. Nothing I need to be doing. Stuff I have to be doing in my head.
Okay, you have to be playing video games. Hey, that's awesome.
I need to chill and get away from hoops.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Instead of like covering hoops, you just like play 2K. That makes sense. I get it.
That's right.
So speaking of 2K, they're unveiling all the player overalls, and I'm like, are we sure that these guys are this good? I don't know, but I do want to talk about so the ESPN put out this article basically projecting what the Eastern Conference is going to look like this next season. They've got the Pacers going 46-36. They think they're going to be a 7 seed, which is a playing team. It feels really absurd to me that they have them winning 1 less game than what they won this last year with Pascal Siakam being on the roster for all of next year as opposed to only half of last year. When you hear that, what is kind of your reaction to it?
Yeah, when I read through their schedule, that's how I do my standings prediction for the Pacers. I got 49, so I am definitely more bullish on the Pacers than ESPN is. But it's interesting from like a very big picture zoom out, like NBA perspective to do exercise that they did, because I think what they would say is, well, the Pacers are running back largely the same team, and the East got better. Right, the Knicks are better, the Sixers are better, at least should be. The Bucks should be better, right? So if you pluck away 2 wins from those teams, and they have a pretty similar season to last year, 46, and they get separate. Like I get the lazy thought of that, but you're right. A couple things like that, not the perfect way to do it. One is that, yes, they have Siakam for 82 games now, not 41, right? So if they do better in the first half of the season, the record would be better. 2, and the reason running it back makes the most sense is they're young, right? Like they have so many players that could be better next year than last year. And if any of them are better, the team will be better, right? It could be Andrew Nembhard, it could be Mathurin, it could be Jarris, it could be Halliburton, who's only 24, right? It could be Obi, it could be a lot of guys, right? So if any of them are better, the Pacers are better. So I understand why the natural thinking is that even if they're a little better, the East is better and they don't win that many more games. Like, I get that, but I think they're going to be about the same, like in the same standings range, battling with those, Cavs, Magic, Bucks, Sixers group teams for a seed. But I think if they're like actually a worse team, I'd be surprised, right? So I wouldn't be stunned if they were 7th, honestly, just because the East is better. But I'm with you that it doesn't pass the smell test to win less games. That said, that the East is better. It's going to be harder to be in that top end group, but there should be a better team. So it'll be fascinating to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by it because in my opinion, I feel like the Pacers will be a top 4 seed. Just looking at how they performed last year, they consistently beat the Celtics and the Bucks and some of the better Eastern Conference teams and better teams in the NBA in general. And then they go play Charlotte on a Tuesday night with 300 people in the crowd, and they would lose. And I think that, maturing, having an extra year underneath a young team's belt, bringing in a veteran like Siakam, I just don't see them losing as many games that they should win. So I've got them closer to 51 or 52 wins, which I think should grab them a top 4 seed.
Yeah, I do wonder how what you just described balances out, right? Because I tried to explain this to you, and I know you know all this, but in my head it's really hard to balance like Okay, they got swept by Portland last year. Like what? How? How did they? And they lost to Charlotte twice, like you said. They lost to the Wizards. What other bad? The Spurs beat them. I can go through a bunch of these. The Nets beat them. Like they had so many bad losses, but they swept the Mavs. The Pacers swept the Thunder. They beat the Celtics twice. They beat the Bucks a million times. Like I'd have to go back through to get all of them. That they did very well against good teams and very bad against bad teams, which was weird. And so I wonder what that balances out to next year, right? Are they still going to be as good against the top teams if they're better against the bad teams? Like, is there actually some? Well, they don't do as well against Boston and OKC, but they beat the teams they're supposed to beat this year, right? Like, what if that ends up just balancing out and coming out in the wash? But I think that the way they play with such a high octane offense, I think it's possible they could be similar, where they could beat anybody any night and lose to anybody any night when they're not clicking. So I'll be fascinated to see what that looks like and what maturity actually looks like, because really in the NBA's history, I haven't seen an offense like this. Like the Celtics were a better offense last year, but they just have a lot of rock solid guys and less variance. The Pacers had one of the best offenses in league history, but it was either really good or had some like nights where they tripped over themselves a bit. So I'll be curious what it looks like with another year of kind of growth with this group.
Yeah, me too. Once again, joined by Tony East of Locked On Pacers, also writes and covers the Fever. I'm interested by they've got people are expecting for Boston to be awesome. I do think there's that kind of championship lull. Like I don't know if they're a 60-win team again just because they take more games off. Philly is an interesting case study because you can't tell me that Embiid's going to be healthy all year, and you also can't tell me that Paul George is going to play 70 games. He's probably going to play, in the low 50s, because unless it's a contract year, that guy doesn't play in very many games. So projecting standings in the NBA is always an interesting thing because of all those, different variables that kind of happen. The WNBA, though, everybody plays every night. I've watched the first 2 games of the Fever post the Olympic break. They look awesome. What is kind of your general? You said what?
They're hooping.
They are. They are hooping. They are definitely doing that. What is your just kind of overall impression of them been after these first 2 games?
That was their best consecutive games of the season, right? They keep having those little milestones, right? In late June, they were playing better, but they had only beat bad teams. They finally beat the Mercury. They got a good win. And then they finally beat a good team when they beat the Liberty. And then, wow, they're like clicking a little bit. They beat the Lynx too. But they never won like 2 awesome games in a row against like actually good teams. And again, another significant step forward for this young team trying to find some consistency, because right before the break, they beat the Liberty, and then they lost to then they beat the Lynx, and then they lost to the Wings. Like, those are 2 of the worst teams they lost to. And we just talked about with the Pacers, ironically. So, stringing together these 2 wins against Phoenix, against Seattle, that alone is good, right? That shows something about this team and the progress that they're making in terms of consistency and playing together. But I think the playing together part's what has mattered the most, in that they've been so good on offense, right? They 98 against Phoenix, 92. I can't remember. I should know that, against Seattle. And they have had defense, like they didn't defend very well against the Mercury, but when they get into the 90s, like they're going to win a lot more than they lose.
That's right.
And it's not. And then don't get me wrong. Like, a lot of it's Caitlin. She was amazing in both games. But like Kelsey Mitchell looks good. Lexi Hall was stepping up. Katie Lou Samuelson hit big shots. Melissa Smith's filling in the gaps. Aaliyah Boston's like passing. Like when they have their stars clicking and playing together, that's when they look their best, and their offense is just totally humming right now. So I think this is their best. That was their best weekend or stretch of the season, and I think they probably are mad they have this week off, right? Because they're playing well. They want to play, so they've got a tough one coming in Minnesota on a key jersey retirement night up there for the Lynx. But this is the best they've looked all year, and unfortunately the Dream are also playing well, or else you could say this would be a big stretch for their playoff push.
I mean, look, they should make the playoffs. I'm assuming they'll be, the 5 or the 6 seed, kind of somewhere in there.
Whoa.
Dude, they look awesome. Like,
they do look good.
They like you said, like the offense is better. Look, I want to ask you about Christy Sides. I think she's done a good job this year. Like, we're going to focus a lot on the offense, and we should, because like you said, it's been awesome with Caitlin and Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hull hitting a whole bunch of threes against the Storm, and Aaliyah Boston looks great, and Melissa Smith is playing really well. So the offense is, like you said, it's humming. which, in part is because of, Sides and the way that she's having them run the offense. But I feel like the defense has gotten better throughout the course of the year. I think it's hard to get young teams to just be willing to defend, yet alone be good at it. What is your evaluation of Christy Sides kind of been throughout the season?
Yeah, I think when we were talking earlier in the season, I would say to you and to anybody, like, give this team a little time with Christy Sides, because one, their schedule was so ridiculous that they never practice. And I usually would say this when teams say, "Oh, we haven't had time to practice," that sounds like kind of crap to me. Like, you're pros, you should still be good at this stuff. But every time they would have a day to practice before a game, they would play a lot better. So I'm like, okay, they're not lying. Like, when they can refocus on these things, that's good. And so they had the break. They had a real schedule that wasn't insane, and Christy Sides could help them focus on stuff defensively. And hey, they're defending better. They're still not a good defensive team. They're still probably below average, but they get enough stops now that they get into the open floor, and Kaylin and Kelsey can, Kaylin's maybe the best passer in the league, and Kelsey's the fastest player in the league. Like, when they get in transition, one of them's doing something, right? So they just needed to be like 10th or 9th on defense and not last. And they've done that, and they've gotten better on that end. And that is, I'd be curious what Christy thinks of her own work on that end of the floor, because when she got hired, Lynn Dunn was really excited that she's been a defensive coach, like in the college level, as assistants with all teams. Like, she wanted this team to be a good defensive team. They have not been good, but they've been good enough recently, and that really matters because it allows them to hit their offensive style. But I think she has to be really happy with the progress they've made on that end of the floor. And she's helped set a culture. She's finally got the team playing the way they want. It has to feel really good that, like, people doubted her and her coaching abilities, and when they were 2-8, and to be fair, like, those discussions should have happened when you start 2-8, but she's a better coach than that, and the team is better than that, and she showed that recently, and now they're 11-7 since that start, and look pretty good on both ends. And her and Kaylin's chemistry has grown from a coach-player perspective. I always thought she was better than everybody was saying. I feel very vindicated that the team is clicking a little bit, and especially, like you said, playing good enough. Still not good, but good enough on the defensive end.
That's exactly right. Once again, joined by Tony East of Locked On Pacers. He also writes and covers the Indiana Fever. Follow him on Twitter at Tony R. East to see all of his work. So, look, it wouldn't be the WNBA, and we wouldn't be talking about the WNBA unless we mentioned some of the drama that seems to happen every time the Fever take the floor.
Did I miss one this time?
Well, I was going to go back to the Storm game and the little altercation that Christy Sides had.
Yes.
And so I'm of the opinion. So look, I grew up with multiple brothers. We competed and everything. And, I had some anger issues growing up. If I lost, I get pretty upset. And my older brother is an excellent trash talker. Okay. That might be the only compliment I ever give him. And I'll never forget, like, getting upset and my dad grabbing me and be like, Jonathan, if you don't want to hear him talk trash, then just beat him. That's kind of my answer for everything, is like, if you win, then you don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. My other thing was, like, I understand that the Fever left their starters in maybe a little bit too long, but they also took a shot clock violation. I felt like the Storm were just upset that they lost. What was kind of your read on everything that happened in that game?
It probably feels like, if you're the other team in a fourth quarter like the Fever just had, what they shoot 7 for 8 from 3 in that quarter. I don't know if you remember, but absurdly good, right? Like, they never missed. It honestly probably feels like they're running up the score because they just can't miss, right? And they did have their starters involved, but Storm also had their starters in for like a lot of that time.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I never felt like they were doing anything that was atypical. I've seen games where team leave their starters in longer than normal, but it didn't feel like and maybe the Fever did that, but it didn't feel like at the point where it was like they're running up the score, they're like stat padding, or they're doing this against, the end of the bench players. So it was kind of obscure. Like, it came out of nowhere to me. I was like, wait, there's some beef going on. Like, Pokey Chapman's popping in there. She's coach of Fever. She's a Storm assistant. Like, where did that come from? And then the game ends like 3 seconds later, and they're like, hey, good game. It's just gamemanship. It just kind of made no sense to me. It just came out of nowhere. And so because it came out of nowhere, I either think, one, we don't know exactly what happened, or like what made her so mad, because in the final minute, like, Kaylin did her pump up the crowd stuff. She just kind of faded through the Storm bench area. Like that would make you mad, right?
Yeah.
And then
well, she got bumped into the Storm bench. Like the one
she was headed that way, but yeah, Skylar
Yeah.
did give her a nice hey, go this way. I think that could have been part of it too, and I think just the environment of that game kind of led to that. But I think the moment ended and they were not as mad right away. It was just like, if you're the coach and there's nothing you can do, everyone's hitting the three right in your team's face, like you're getting blasted by these players, like it would hurt pretty bad.
Yeah,
the way that went down.
I thought it was funny. I was like, this is great. This is something just extra for me to talk about. And their next game is Saturday night. They're taking on the Lynx on the road in Minnesota, which I can't wait for, because we know that the Lynx head coach doesn't give, a crap, apparently, about Caitlin Clark based off of, her previous comments about the Olympic team and everything. I can't wait to watch this game. I think there's going to be some drama. The Lynx remember the loss that the Fever handed them right before the break. What is kind of your feeling heading into this game? I mean, I like the Fever to at least, be another tough out for a good Lynx team. What is kind of your feeling heading into the game?
They beat the Lynx all right, but Fee was banged up, right? And he candidate in the future Tyler. So I think Minnesota to be the favorites are really good. They're playing very well right now. Kayla McBride and Collier together has been a ridiculous combo. And they just made a trade, which is rare in the W. And in 2 season trades on the same day. And so Minnesota is the only team that really upgraded their really talented teams this year with it. Obviously, Gabby Williams to the Storm is a big deal. But so they're going to be good. They're going to be tough to beat.
Tony, you there?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
The alarm just went off on my phone.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, that was super straight. So, all that together, it's going to be a bigger deal because it's Maya Moore's jersey retirement night. So that'll be a big deal for Minnesota fans. And that was Caitlin Clark's favorite player growing up, right? So I'll be curious if that kind of adds to the environment of the game. I think that the last game the Fever won was a huge win for them, but the Lynx are better right now than they were at that time. But the Fever are better than they were for that game too. So I would slightly favor Minnesota, but I mean, with the way the Fever are playing, it's like the Pacers, right? With the way their offense plays, they can beat anyone. They can also lose that. They can beat anybody, and so I think it'll be a great game, a big test for them to see how much progress they've truly made, and for Cheryl Reeve to try to keep her team running. They've get since the Olympic break too.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, Tony. Last question for you, and I'll let you go once again. This is Tony East of Locked On Pacers. He also writes and covers the Indiana Fever. The Liberty it feels like they're going to run away with the 1 seed. Are they kind of the heavy favorite to win the WNBA this year? They've got a 3.5 game lead on the Sun right now for that 1 seed.
It's hard for me to say. I kind of still feel like the Aces are the favorite, even though they clearly don't deserve that line of thinking because they're not playing that well this year, but they've won the last 2 titles and they have the best player in the league, to me at least, in Asia Wilson. But they're not playing great. They were missing Chelsea Gray for so long, and they still aren't looking awesome. Since then, they have a lot of off-court distraction-y stuff happening. So in my head, it should still be the team that's won the last 2 titles. But Sabrina has been maybe the best player in the league this year. She's been awesome. Definitely the best guard in the league, and that's a big step up for her to be, in that conversation. Stewie still looks very good. John Quell shooting. So yeah, my head says Aces, but my heart says it's probably the Liberty right now. They look fantastic, and Connecticut's just they're really good. They just don't. It doesn't feel like they have that top end talent in the same way, even though Alyssa Thomas is awesome. So I think you're probably right to say it's the Liberty, but I can never quit the Aces. They always find a way to get it done.
They really do. From a name recognition standpoint, it would definitely be the Aces, between Plum and Asia Wilson and the rest of their awesome roster. And so, Tony, thanks for your time, man. I always appreciate it. You're always great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
You got it, man. See you. That is Tony East of Locked On Pacers. He also writes and covers the Indiana Fever. You can check out all of his stuff on Twitter at Tony R. East. Great follow. Great guy. Yeah, really, really busy guy too. Covering, writing, and doing podcasts for everybody. It's great. He's a great dude. So once again, that was Tony East. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, greatness jumps off the page. Okay, we all know that. We saw it with Caitlin Clark really quickly. And that's the thing about greatness. We identify it quickly. But just because you aren't great right away doesn't mean you can't develop into it. That's coming your way here in 4 minutes on The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's on Twitter, watching the live stream, follow the station there at Ticket 1430. Also follow me while you're there at _ Jonathan Smith. Also head over to YouTube, subscribe to the Indy's Sports Ticket YouTube channel, and, watch the stream there. Join the chat, join the conversation. It's a great time. I will tell you that much. So during breaks, I oftentimes just kind of mindlessly scroll through Twitter, just see whatever comes up, and, in case there's, some breaking news, maybe Adam Schefter, releases something, or, Woj drops a Woj bomb on the NBA, just trying to stay up to date with all the things that are happening. But from time to time, it's Twitter. I come across some funny things. And a guy, I guess he just graduated from college. He tweeted out, "What am I supposed to do with all these jerseys that I have? Like, where do I wear them now that I'm not in college?" And as someone who owns many jerseys, loves his mini jerseys, wears them not all the time, but I wear them a pretty decent amount. If you're out there and you don't know what to do with your jerseys, when to wear them, here's the answer. And you're going to see me do this all winter. Throw on a pair of joggers, whenever you're going out, wherever. Throw on a black hoodie. Throw the jersey on over the hoodie. It's the easiest thing to do. Spices it up a little bit. Throws a little color in the mix. It's the best part about cold weather. I can wear hoodies and I can throw my jerseys on over the top, and it's a great time. It's an absolute blast of a time. So, for jersey people out there that don't know how to wear them, that is your answer. Now, I want to talk about something that everyone loves: greatness. Okay? Greatness is something that people notice quickly, no matter where it's at, no matter where they find it. Okay? They notice it and they tell people about it. People noticed Caitlin Clark when she was at Iowa. Iowa, a school in a place that most people haven't visited, and a school that has zero women's basketball history. Okay, it'd be one thing if she was at UConn and we found her. It'd be another thing if she was at South Carolina and we found her. No, we found her at Iowa. Okay, then she got to the WNBA and some haters showed up. That's usually another sign that you're great. Haters show up and they tried to say that Angel Reese was better than her, and that Caitlin Clark wasn't going to win Rookie of the Year, and that she'd struggle, and that, all sorts of other nonsense. Also, have you noticed that the people who said all those things, like, you don't hear from them much anymore? I don't know if Elon took away their Twitter abilities, or, what happened to them, but I haven't heard from those people in a while. My point is, though, that we notice great quickly. Okay, we notice it very quickly. Like, we notice something that's going to shift a space quickly. For example, when the iPhone showed up, they sold 300,000 of them in the first weekend, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at the time, when the original iPhone came out, it only ran on AT&T's network. But either way, it shook the market. People jumped on that train very quickly, and people noticed it. People notice great things quickly. Okay? It didn't take long for people to notice that Patrick Mahomes was great. Okay, you saw him play that one game as rookie year, and you walked away, you're like, "Oh man, this dude's pretty good. This dude's got it. Whatever it is, Patrick Mahomes has it." Okay, it didn't take long to figure that out. It didn't take long for people to notice that LeBron James was great. You saw him play 2 games, and you were like, "Holy crap, this dude's 18. This dude's going to be awesome for a long time." He's been awesome for longer than I think any of us thought, but it was clear early that he looked very different from the other players in the NBA. Okay, it was the same thing with Michael Jordan. By like game 15, it was like, this dude's already the best player on the Bulls. All right, and that's how it works for all the other great athletes. It doesn't take us long to realize how great these players are. So we notice great quickly. We also notice terrible quickly. Okay? Like, you saw Jamarcus Russell play 2 quarters, and you're like, geez, Raiders spent the number 1 overall pick on this guy. That guy's a bust. Right? It was clearly bad. It didn't take us long to realize how terrible he was. It didn't take long for people to realize that Ryan Leaf was terrible. He was drafted number 2 overall and was out of the league 4 years later. That doesn't happen to number 2 overall picks. Zach Wilson is still hanging on to roster spots. Okay? We notice great quickly. We notice terrible quickly. Sports fans and consumers in general can quickly identify both ends of that spectrum, great and terrible. Okay, we can identify great and we can identify terrible early in the process. That's obviously not how every player is, though, right? Most players wind up somewhere in the middle, okay? Or they become great later. Okay, some players start terrible and then they progress to solid. Some players start off below average and progress to really good. Some players start as really good and then progress to great. Okay, we see it happen all the time. And I say all this just to say that we can't tell on Anthony Richardson, yet it hasn't kept people from leaping to conclusions, which isn't surprising. Okay, people jump to conclusions all the time. Okay, some people, and this is the interesting part, some people labeled him as awesome, like super quickly, and other people have called him a bust, which feels, a bit heavy. Both really do. And a decade ago, I think the mass population would have looked at the 12 quarters that we saw from Anthony Richardson last year and been like, this guy is a bust, and he would have been out of the league quickly. But the NFL and football in general, the way that it's coached and the way that it is taught, has changed drastically over the past 5 years or so. And here is Tom Brady talking about how those changes have impacted the game of football.
There used to be college programs. Now there are college teams. You're no longer learning a program, you're learning a playbook. And the program is ultimately like at Michigan. For me, that was a pro-style program. 5 years, I got to learn how to drop back pass, to read defenses, to read coverages, to be coached. I had to learn from being 7th quarterback on the depth chart to moving up to 3rd to ultimately being a starter. I had to learn all those things in college. That was development. Then I went to New England, and I was developed by Coach Belichick and the offensive staff there. I didn't start my first year. I think it's just a tragedy that we're forcing these rookies to play early. But the reality is the only reason why they are is because we dumbed the game down, which has allowed them to play. It used to be thought of at a higher level. We used to spend hours and hours in the offseason and training camp trying to be a little bit better than next year. But I think what happens is discourages the coaches from going to deep levels because they realize the players don't have the opportunity to go to a deep level, so they're just going to teach them where they're at.
That was Tom Brady talking about how the NFL has changed over the past couple of years. And look, he's right. The NFL has changed. The way the guys are coached has changed. Okay? Things change, and that's kind of the way that things go. And I think that for the Colts and the development of Anthony Richardson, this is a good thing. We know that Anthony Richardson's physical tools are great. Like I said, we notice great quickly. We notice the arm strength and the speed and the size. You notice that 5 minutes into watching Anthony Richardson throw a football. Okay, it's easy to see. We know he can throw the ball far, and we know he can run fast. Just like Josh Allen when he showed up in Buffalo. Wasn't hard to figure out that, he could throw the ball a mile and he could run fast, right? But he struggled to be accurate. We knew in the first year of Lamar Jackson that he was wildly explosive in the open field, but he struggled to throw the ball from the pocket. And I firmly believe that Anthony Richardson, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, all three of those guys a decade ago would have been written off incredibly fast. But like Tom Brady said, the game of football has changed. Okay, the way that guys are coached and taught is very different. Coaches are teaching players where they're at now, which gives them chances to not only develop, but to play sooner. And that is why I like the chances of Anthony Richardson developing into a good quarterback and being the franchise guy for the Indianapolis Colts. The NFL is way more patient now with quarterbacks than what they used to be. And it's paying off for some, and it's to the detriment of others. Baltimore was patient with Lamar Jackson, and I would argue that it turned out pretty well. The guy's won 2 MVPs, and he's one of the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. The Buffalo Bills, they were patient with Josh Allen, and now he's the 2nd best quarterback in the NFL. And if Patrick Mahomes played in the NFC, or if Patrick Mahomes didn't exist, then maybe the Bills would have a Super Bowl ring by now. Miami, patient with Tua. They had every reason in the world to believe that he was a bust when Brian Flores was the head coach there. But they're like, you know what? We don't think that this is his fault. Let's bring in a young offensive-minded guy, and let's see if Tua can figure it out. And he did, right? And he was 5th in touchdown passes last year, and he was top 5 in completion percentage, and he led the league in passing yards and all that good stuff. Philadelphia was patient with Jalen Hurts, and he got him to a Super Bowl. Shane Steichen was his offensive coordinator, by the way. The Giants, if you want to talk about the bad side of being too patient, They've been too patient with Daniel Jones. They probably should have drafted a quarterback 6th overall this year, but they decided not to do that. That was a mistake. The Jets were too patient with Sam Darnold, right? They learned from their mistake and they moved off Zach Wilson pretty quickly. Okay, the league has changed. It is less cutthroat than what it used to be. Now, like I said, that is not always the best way forward. You can be patient and still have a guy not develop, but that is where Shane Steichen comes into play and why I loved the hire from Chris Ballard. Offensive-minded coaches seem to be more successful in making young quarterbacks work. That's why the Titans hired an offensive-minded coach. That's why they fired Brett Vrabel, one of the best coaches, one of the best head coaches in the NFL. They fired him to hire an unproven offensive-minded coach because they know that if Will Levis isn't good, it doesn't matter who their head coach is. That's why the Panthers hired another offensive-minded head coach to hopefully develop Bryce Young, because they know that if Bryce Young isn't good, then guess what? Their team isn't going to be very good. Offensive-minded coaches elevate young quarterbacks, and teams are much more patient than what they used to be. Okay, and the Colts are going to continue to be patient with Anthony Richardson, and Shane Steichen is going to continue to be paid not only to win games, but also to make sure that Anthony Richardson isn't a bust. Okay, that's ultimately why I think he was hired. Right, that is the number one job of head coaches now, and there's so much investment in meeting the quarterbacks where they are, like Tom Brady said, that I think that it's led to better overall quarterback play in the NFL. Like, this is the deepest amount of good quarterbacks I think we've had in the history of the NFL. Okay. Now, it's obviously dominated by Patrick Mahomes because he's the best one, but from a depth perspective, this is the deepest the NFL has ever been at quarterback. And Anthony Richardson, I think maybe not this year, but hopefully next year, will add to that depth. And, you know, if you've been keeping up with Colts practice, you're probably like, Jonathan, Anthony Richardson sucks. And you're saying that because 2 days ago he went to Cincinnati and he had a bad practice. Okay. But if he plays well tonight, then everyone's going to be right back on that Anthony Richardson bandwagon. Okay. I'm just telling you right now, this is the Anthony Richardson experience this year. Bad game, great game, followed by a good game, followed by an average game, followed by a horrendous game. We're going to be up and down on this Anthony Richardson roller coaster all year. I think he's going to be great tonight. That is also my hope. And it's going to perfectly show us what this season is going to be. More on that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket as we continue discussing Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson, as we continue to discuss the roller coaster of a season that we're about to go on. The roller coaster continues tonight. The starters for the Indianapolis Colts are projected to play a quarter and a half, according to head coach Shane Steichen. So we're going to get to see a decent amount of Anthony Richardson tonight. I can't wait. I'm hopeful. My biggest hope is obviously that Anthony Richardson looks great. I would love to see the pendulum swing all the way back. Okay, because right now people are down on Anthony Richardson. Oh, he had a bad practice. Oh, no. But if he plays great tonight, like I said, everyone's going to be back on that bandwagon. Okay, and if he's good, it will provide some symbolism for what I think that we're going to see this year from Anthony Richardson. Up and down. Up and down. Okay, the dude hasn't played a lot of quarterback. Okay, he's not Andrew Luck, and he's not Peyton Manning. I think that there's a bit of, I don't want to sound rude, but I think Colts fans are a little spoiled when it comes to drafting quarterbacks early in the NFL draft. The last two highly picked quarterbacks by the Colts were studs quickly. Peyton Manning had a rough rookie year, 24 interceptions. That's a rookie record. But in year two, he was great. They went 13-3. Andrew Luck was good right away. Showed up rookie season. Guess what? 11-5 his rookie year, the Colts went. Anthony Richardson, not that guy. He was never going to be that guy. All right, he was never going to show up and immediately rock the world, right? Because he's raw. He hasn't played a lot of quarterback, right? And even before Anthony Richardson was drafted, I could have told you that Anthony Richardson's second year wasn't going to be as good as Peyton Manning's second year, and it wasn't going to be as good as Andrew Luck's second year. Okay, it's going to be up and down because Anthony Richardson just isn't polished. He hasn't played much quarterback in the NFL. Okay, and he didn't play much in college. I think he'll be up tonight, and I think people are going to get excited about it because he's playing against the Bengals backups, right? But this is what normally having a young quarterback is like. There are ups and there are downs. Are there exceptions to this? Of course there are. Of course there are. Andrew Luck, as I mentioned, was good right away. Patrick Mahomes was great right away, right? But most of the time, when it comes to rookie quarterbacks and young quarterbacks in general, there is a period where they struggle. Okay, Josh Allen was bad for 2 years, right? There were bad moments in Lamar Jackson's rookie year. Okay, like this is the normal progression of especially quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson. Okay, Cam Newton wasn't very good his rookie year. These hyper-athletic guys who have to learn how to play the position struggle, all right? And there are some weeks where they look like Superman and you turn on ESPN and they're doing the Sports Center top 10 plays and they're on there twice. Like there are undoubtedly going to be Mondays like that for Anthony Richardson, but there are also going to be days where he's terrible, like he was 2 days ago at practice. Okay, he's going to be up and down, and that's fine. That's probably what we should expect from a young quarterback that hasn't played the position a ton. So I hope he plays well tonight. I can't wait for the discourse on Twitter later. It's going to be great. Let me just tell you. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen right now. If Anthony Richardson is great tonight, all the people that love him are going to turn a blind eye to the fact that the Bengals are playing their backups. And it's going to be about how great Anthony Richardson is. And, that's cool. I don't mind the positivity. But all the people out there that don't like Anthony Richardson are going to be like, oh, well, he's playing against the backups. I would hope he's good. So can't wait to weigh in on all of that. I think it's going to be really entertaining just to sit back and watch and probably poke the bear a little bit. So, and then, if Anthony Richardson's bad, people are going to act like the sky's falling and that, the Colts are never going to be good ever again. So that'll be less fun. So I hope he's good tonight. Some of the other things that I want to see from this Colts team as we get prepared for the dress rehearsal before the official start of the NFL season, which is 2 weeks from today, September 5th. Chiefs, Ravens, that game should be so much fun to watch. I want to see Jonathan Taylor play tonight. I get that, most teams don't like to play starters, especially at running back, because running backs take enough hits, but Jonathan Taylor needs to start building up those calluses of being hit. I'll never forget listening to an interview with Reggie Bush, and it was at a time in his career where it was at, the back end. He wasn't on a team, but he was still in shape in case he got a phone call to come and play. And, I don't remember who was doing the interview, but they asked him, they're like, what's that like? Like, you show up, it's the middle of the season. Are you better than everyone else just because you haven't been hit? And he gave this really interesting answer where he talked about how that's what you would think. But, he's like, playing in the NFL is like being in, like if you play running back, it's like being in 40 car crashes every Sunday, right? That's how they describe it. And so he always felt like he was at his most vulnerable of being hurt early in the season before he developed those calluses, before he got used to, getting hit. And so because of that, I'd like to see Jonathan Taylor get like 10 carries tonight, I think, or just 10 touches, but maybe that's through receptions. Maybe they try to get him out in the open so he's getting hit by a corner instead of a linebacker. I don't know. But I think he needs to get hit a little bit tonight. Maybe that's through blocking, and pass protection. I don't know. But I'd like to see him play. I'd like to see him build up some of those calluses. Look, he's missed 13 games over the last 3 seasons. A guy, that, he should just be playing more than that. There's no other way around it. Christian McCaffrey is labeled as this injury-prone running back. Yeah, he's missed less games over the last 3 years than Jonathan Taylor has. Okay, so Jonathan Taylor needs to play tonight. Obviously, don't want him to play too much, but I do think that he needs to get used to getting hit. Okay. In addition to that, staying on the offensive side of the ball, the offensive line got to play well. Need to see it. Okay, and I want to see a couple of big plays from A.D. Mitchell and this receiving group as well. Let's start with the offensive line, though. It's the backups. You're playing against the second-string defensive line from the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a pretty good defensive line between Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson, but those guys aren't playing tonight. Okay, this is the third year that this group of 5 has been together. We've been told that this is an extreme advantage by those offensive linemen. Okay, so I don't want to see any, blips in communication on what pass protection you should be in. I don't want to see guys going to the wrong spot because, this is supposed to be the advantage of keeping these guys together, is that there aren't mistakes like that, right? And from a physical dominant standpoint, they should push this backup Bengals line around. They should dominate up front. Okay, if the Bengals only rush 4, Anthony Richardson should have all day to throw. If they decide to turn around and hand it off to Jonathan Taylor or Evan Hull or whichever other backup running back the Colts decide to give the ball off to, then this offensive line should generate a good push and create room for that running back to run the football. Because once again, you're playing against the backups. Okay, when you're playing against the backups, then your offensive line should look dominant. Right? They should have their way up front tonight. We'll see if that's what happens tonight. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. I really want to hop on the bandwagon of this Colts offensive line is going to be great and, yada, yada, yada. But I really, really doubt that that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to walk away from watching this offensive line tonight and perhaps be a little disappointed. I hope that that's not what happens, but hey, it could. Other things in the passing game. Obviously, I want to see Anthony Richardson play well, but more specifically, I want to see big plays in the passing game. Okay, the Colts have had an influx of speed at the receiver position. Josh Downs, who obviously won't play tonight, still dealing with that ankle sprain. That's a 4-4 guy. Adonai Mitchell, who should get to be on the field quite a bit this year. That's a 4-3 guy. Anthony Gould, who's going to probably get some snaps with the ones since, Josh Downs is hurt. That's a 4-3 guy. Okay, Alec Pierce is a guy who's supposed to be able to stretch the field and make big plays down the field. Okay, so they've got some weapons that can make some big plays, and I would like to see this Colts offense capitalize on that. No, I'm not saying that I need to see 2 60-yard touchdown plays. That's not, no. But some big chunk plays, like a 20-yard in route to Anthony Gould or something like that. Okay, just some bigger plays down the field. Zach Hicks came on the show on Tuesday, as he always does, at 11 o'clock, and we were we were talking about that. We were talking about, the big chunk plays and all those things. And, he made a really interesting observation about Shane Steichen's offenses when he was with the Chargers and when he was with the Eagles. And even last year, he's like, it's a bunch of layups and threes. He goes, and last year, there just weren't enough threes, right? There weren't enough big plays. Okay. So I am hopeful that we see some big plays from this Colts offense. With that being said, it is a preseason game. They're not doing, a ton of install and a ton of prep for whoever they're playing against. They're, working on themselves, so to speak. So either way, still want to see some big plays. I expect the Colts to kind of dominate tonight. Last time I checked, they were 5.5-point favorites in Vegas. Large part of that is because, their starters are going to play against the Bengals backups for a quarter and a half. I want to see some success. I want to see no one get hurt. That's obviously the biggest thing. If the Colts leave this game with 3 or 4 injuries, then, we'll all be ripping Shane Steichen after it happens. But, we'll see how it goes. Other news in the NFL, Bo Nix, starting quarterback for the Broncos. Congrats to him. Okay. Every team should start their rookie quarterback unless you have Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre. That's just kind of the way I see it. Or unless your offensive line is terrible. New England Patriots don't start Drake May. I don't think that spells success for anybody. Other things going on. Joey Votto retired. Love Joey Votto. Okay. I'm a Cubs fan, so I know Joey Votto very well. Just an awesome combination of power hitting and patience, which is a very unusual combo, right? Usually those big power hitters, they're striking out a bunch. They're not walking. Not Joey Votto, man. Like, he was an absolute maestro at the plate. I mean, just always knew what pitches to hit. And he was amazing. Okay. He was so much fun just to watch as a hitter, and just the little nuances and small things that he would do at the plate to gain a slight advantage. And he was really, really good. And so, that's, another great player that, I grew up watching that is sadly out of the league now. He retired yesterday. Is he a Hall of Famer? I have no idea. Okay. The Baseball Hall of Fame is stupid as far as I'm concerned. I think that they make a lot of mistakes. I think it's a little too hard to get in. Like, I like the exclusivity of the club, but I think it should be a little less exclusive than what it is. So that's going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon, talking about whatever we're going to see tonight from this Colts-Bengals game coming your way. 5 minutes. It's the Dan Dockett Show. Thanks again for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. I will talk to you tomorrow from 10 to noon right here on Indy's Sports Ticket.